Alright, I am back with another video, and after my last video, titled The Mage Slayer, I thought, what other feats could give me ideas for a build? And one feat that I've always really liked the idea of is Defensive Duellist. The idea that you are so adept at dueling in one-on-one combat that you're able to use your reaction to increase your AC if you're wielding a finesse weapon. A bit like a light version of the shield spell. And I really wanted to try and make a build around this, the idea of being able to dodge and then fight back in one-on-one combat. So I'm talking parries, ripostes, etc. So I mean, obviously most people would just make a Battlemaster fighter in that case, which is totally valid. It's probably one of the more powerful ways of doing this concept, but I wanted to add a little bit more. I wanted to create someone who was an absolute master of the art of dodging, and not just like, you know, in a way of like they just kind of block with a shield and riposte. No, I want to be dodging, dipping, weaving, kind of backing in and out, and being able to retaliate with huge amounts of power. And also getting as high of an AC as possible, well, not as possible, but just a really high AC, because technically we could go a bit higher, and also, but doing it in like a fun and unique way that kind of makes sense for this duelist character. But then I also got an idea to do it in a way that, like, what if we're so good at dodging and we have such a high reaction speed that we're able to command our allies to do the same, giving them some of our own dodging ability. Which in the end I think creates a fun and unique build that I think everyone is going to get a bit of a kick out of. So, without further ado, let's get into the build. First up, we're actually going to be playing as a halfling today, a rarity for the channel I know, but I feel like it makes sense, because we're going to get lucky for whenever we roll a 1 for an attack roll, ability check or saving throw, we can re-roll the die and must use the new roll. Just gives us a little bit more to work with, as well as we have advantage on the saving throws against being frightened. I feel like both of these fit the idea of the build pretty well, especially since we are going to be kind of a light party face in the end, so I like the idea of having both of these skills as well. I've also gone with Lightfoot Halfling for our sub-race to gain advantage on stealth checks, because why not? For our starting class, we are actually going to be a Bard today. I like to start as Bard whenever I can, because it just does give us the most skill proficiencies, as well as some useful, like, kind of early game spells and cantrips, so we're going to go over those now. First up, for our cantrips, we're going to gain Vicious Mockery and Friends. Friends helps us be the face of the party, and if you're not taking Vicious Mockery on a duelist fencing type character, then you're doing something wrong. Moving on to our spells, we have access to some pretty good roleplay, you know, utility spells and such like that. Speak of Animals to allow us to, well, it's in the name. Longstrider for more movement speed, kind of helps up for the fact that we're a halfling. Featherfall to allow us to move around the battlefield a bit easier, and Cure Wounds to give us a bit of healing, which overall should be pretty good. For our starting instrument, choose whatever you like. I've gone for the flute. Don't know why, just wanted to go with the flute. And then finally, for our ability scores, we have the following. Dexterity is at 16 because we are going to be using it as our main attacking modifier. Constitution is at 12, and honestly, if I didn't think the comment section would flay me alive, I'd put this down to an 8. Because I'll be honest, when this build is kind of said and done, it's very rare that we actually get hit at all, but I do think it is somewhat unrealistic to just kind of expect us to never ever get hit, so at least having a 12 in Constitution will give us a decent HP pool by the time we're done, but since we're mainly going to be focusing on backline support and 1 versus 1 combat, we shouldn't be getting hit very often, and I guess if we do, we're going to be able to tank just that little bit. Intelligence is at 8, we don't need it. Strength is at 8, we don't need it. Wisdom is at 16 because it is going to be fueling our monk features, because yes, we're doing a bit of monk today. We're making a bard monk, a badonk, as it were. And then Charisma is at 14. Obviously, for most bards, you'd like this to be higher, but we really don't need it. We're mostly only using bards utility spells, and 14 is a nice alternative, is a nice kind of medium to get the best of the party face skills, like the persuasion and such like that. But if you feel like you're really not liking that Constitution being at 12, swap those two around. Moving on to skill proficiencies, we're going to get quite a few. I believe I went for Guild Artisan, giving us access to History and Persuasion. Correct me if I'm wrong, sometime I actually made this build a couple of days ago, so I forget which background it is. You'll have to forgive me. I'm pretty sure History and Persuasion is Guild Artisan, though. We've also got Acrobatics, Stealth, and Performance from Bards. Overall, we got a pretty solid early game skill set. At level 2, we're going to jump straight over to the aforementioned Monk. I feel like it's going to be quite important for us to build up our Monk abilities before we get into the Bard stuff. Before we can teach other people how to dodge, we've got to learn to dodge ourselves. Level 1 of Monk is going to give us access to Flurry of Blows. You all know what this does. We use a bonus action and a key point to deal 2 attacks. We're also going to get our unarmored defense with our wisdom modifier, which we will be using. Dexterous attacks, allowing us to use any weapon that isn't two-handed with our dexterity. We also have death strikes, so our monk weapons will deal more damage if equal to our martial arts die, if, you know, they're not already doing that. And also the ability to attack as a bonus action after making an attack with a monk weapon or an unarmed strike. Overall, very solid kit from the first level. And at monk level 2, we're already going to get an improvement to our movement speed, really making up for the fact that we're a halfling, as well as one of the most important abilities from this class, patient defense. This is our active duelist dodge. We spend a bonus action and a key point to impose disadvantage on all attack rolls against us and give us advantage on dexterity saving throws. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to go for this over something like Battlemaster Fighter. That advantage on dex saving throws is also really important, because it's great being a one-on-one fighter dealing with people who use weapons, but as soon as a fireball comes your way, you're suddenly in a bit of trouble. Having advantage on those dexterity saving throws is going to feel really, really good by the time this build is done. Trust me, you'll see why. At monk level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and honestly, this is kind of a pick your favorite situation. I don't think any of these subclasses are really going to stand above the rest very, very much in terms of what we're trying to do, but I do think in terms of just making a pure duelist character where the open hand is the way to go. This is going to give us access to Flurry of Blows, Topple, Stagger, and Push, allowing us to inflict the following conditions when we use our Flurry of Blows. Topple, knocking enemies prone, Stagger, being able to make them, well, stagger, which means they cannot take reactions, which means you could disengage for free, and Push is pushing them away, again, also kind of allowing you to disengage for free. Huh. Kind of weird, actually. Moving on. At level 4 of Monk, we'll get Slowfall. We already have Featherfall, so yeah. But now we get to choose our first feat of the build. Now, you do kind of have to make a choice. Obviously, this build is made around Defensive Duellist. When attacked while wielding a finesse weapon you are proficient with, you can use a reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your armor class, possibly causing the attack to miss. Now, I'm going to be 100% real with you. You'll notice in today's combat footage that I'm showing today that Defensive Duellist did not proc once. And that's because by the time you kind of reach the end game with this build, Defensive Duellist just becomes unnecessary. 90% of the time, between the fact that you'll have pretty much a 25 AC at base when you kind of have this build at full power, plus the fact that you are also going to be getting attacked with disadvantage thanks to pace and defense half of the time, Defensive Duellist just doesn't proc anymore. Now, in the early to mid-game, Defensive Duellist will happen way more, because you're kind of at that middling point with your AC, your stats aren't all the way there yet, etc, etc. So I actually do think that Defensive Duellist will work around this level, so I am going to be taking it here. But even though this whole build is made around Defensive Duellist, by the time you reach the end, it becomes somewhat obsolete, so I could honestly see you re-speccing it out. Don't get me wrong though, it's still going to feel very fun and satisfying to pull off as you play throughout the game, but when you kind of reach the end, like I say, it just kind of stops working, so you could get something like Lucky if you want to kind of build on the halfling aspect. At Monk level 5, we're going to get access to extra attack. At the same time, we would have got it if we went with something like Valour or Swords Bard, so we're not really losing anything here. As well as the ability to use Stunning Strike, potentially stunning targets by spending a key point, meaning that they cannot take actions, bonus actions, or reactions. You know, while we're here, do you guys say key points or Kai points? I've heard both. Let me know in the comments. At Monk level 6, we're going to get a bunch of great stuff from Open Hand, but as a base, we're also going to gain Key Empowered Strikes, meaning that now we can overcome physical resistance to non-magical damage with our unarmed strikes. Very, very nice. We're going to get a bit more unarmed movement, as well as the ability to manifest our body, mind, or soul into our attacks, allowing us to do necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage with our unarmed strikes. I decided to keep it to necrotic for this build. As you'll see later, there's a reason for that. I mean, looking at the weapon that you can see I have equipped, you've probably already figured that out. And also, we're going to get a really important ability for this build, Wholeness of Body. This is going to give us a bit of passive healing, as well as the ability to regain some key points and give us an extra bonus action, meaning that we can patient defense and flurry of blows in the same turn, or just go for multiple flurries of blows. Basically, we can be both offensive and defensive for 3 turns, which feels very, very good in practice. And finally, at level 7 of Monk, we're going to get a couple of things. Number 1, Stillness of Mind. If we're charmed or frightened, we automatically remove the condition by casting Stillness of Mind. Because we're a halfling, this means that we're pretty much never going to be frightened, because obviously we have advantage on the save, as well as we just cure it if we do. Charmed, maybe a little bit more, but I like this feature anyway. The main thing we're here for is evasion. Whenever a spell or effect will deal half damage on a successful dex save, you take no damage if you succeed and only half damage if you fail. And because patient defense gives us advantage on those dexterity saving throws, boom shakala, not only are we basically never going to be getting hit by standard attack rolls, dex saving throws for offensive spells are just also not going to be a thing, which is great. Now that we've hit level 7 of Monk, I want to jump back over to Bard. Level 2 of Bard is going to give us access to Jack of all trades, giving us half of our proficiency bonus in ability checks that we're not actively proficient in, as well as a third short rest, which is great resource management for our Monk, since we get key points back on a short rest. We're also going to get to choose another level 1 spell at this point, and again, it's kind of a pick your favourite situation. I'm just going to go for a bit of healing, and the off chance us or one of our allies do get hit, we're able to patch them up. At Bard level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and, well, it's been a while, but I legitimately think that for this build that we're trying to build today, College of Valour is the most appropriate option. College of Valour, I know what you're thinking, I know, College of Swords is right there, we're a duelist character, it makes a lot of sense, go with it if you want, but College of Valour allows us to use our Bardic Inspiration to add that bonus to weapon damage or armor class. Remember when I said we were going to teach our allies to dodge and be a battlefield commander? This is how. So in addition to our regular Bardic Inspiration, we get these extra buffs, both offensive and defensive, which just feels so fun to use in the moment, especially on a build like this, where we are just meant to be this master of dodging. It always feels like we're an old-timey kung fu master in a way. It feels kind of weird, but I don't know, I just like it. I feel like it fits this build very, very well. If you want to lean more into the up-close dueling aspect, obviously College of Swords exists, but come on, we never use College of Valour, and I do think if we're going to use it, now's the time. And again, I love the idea of us being able to fight an enemy one-on-one to the side, but also quickly throw out Bardic Inspirations to our allies who are fighting like multiple enemies or on the front line. I don't know, I really like this one, so I want to use it here. We're also going to gain access to a level 2 spell. And I would say it's up to you kind of what you want to pick here. I mean, if you've got the 1D&D spell list revisions mod, which I do recommend that you get, Mirror Image obviously does become an option, giving you way more armor class, which obviously does make sense, or Silvery Barbs to impose advantage and disadvantage, but let's keep it slightly more vanilla today. I'm going to go with See Invisibility. Cast it at the start of your day, you'll be able to see invisible creatures that come close to you, so not even invisible creatures will be able to catch you off guard, allowing you to dodge. We're also going to get to choose 2 ability expertise, and the game has gone for persuasion and performance, and honestly, I kind of agree. However, since we did get that stealth proficiency from Halfling, you could put that expertise there if you want to make this a bit of a stealthy character as well. At Bard level 4, you're going to gain access to another cantrip. Honestly, it's another pick your favourite situation. I can see Minor Illusion being used to distract an enemy in combat, allowing you to gain an opening. We also gain access to another level 2 spell, and I actually like getting Detect Thoughts, because again, I feel like the ability to literally read your opponent's mind, which is how you're able to dodge their attacks, is actually a kind of fun concept. And I would also say at this point, if you want to replace a low-level spell that you're not really using so much, probably something like Cure Wounds if you're mainly spending your action attacking, then I'd say you could probably replace it with something else here. I mean, like I say, we've got all these options. Blindness, I feel like also fits the build quite well, so feel free to make it what you will. Next up, we are going to get to choose our next feat, and I would immediately take an ability score improvement and bump up our dexterity. And then finally, at Bard level 5, we're going to get Font of Inspiration, bringing back our Bardic Inspiration on a short rest. Now, we're extremely resource efficient, both of our main resources are coming back on short rests, as well as our Bardic Inspiration is improved to a 1d8, meaning that all of our Combat Inspiration stuff can have an increase of upwards of +8, which is very, very nice. We also are going to get to choose a level 3 spell at this point, but I don't really think there are any level 3 spells I would really be, you know, fiending to grab. I'd say we'd probably go back to something from level 2 or 1 even. Like, honestly, it's kind of up to you. I feel like I've gotten everything I would kind of want. Heroism kind of feels like it fits the bill, I guess. Cloud of Daggers could also kind of fit the vibe, but then again, Enhanced Ability could also just be a very good, like, party face skill, but will allow you to do a bunch of different things, so honestly, I would just take that. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is, well, to put it bluntly, Ultra Instinct. You are never ever going to get attacked while using this build, because by the time this build is done, like I say, you're going to have on average about 25 AC per turn once all is said and done. Combining this with the effect to impose disadvantage on all attacks against you, as well as being able to gain advantage on dex saves, again, you're pretty much never going to get hit, and you have a ton of abilities that are going to allow you to be offensive in combat. But then again, that's just your average open hand monk. What this build adds to it is the ability to pass those benefits on to allies through combat inspiration, being the face of the party with your charisma bardic abilities, being able to do all sorts of different things with utility spells, making yourself and your allies faster, being very good on the resource management thanks to that extra short rest, restoring both your bardic inspiration and your key points, and having a decent pool of both. So overall, while you are incredibly defensive, I mean, we are quite offensive. Not as offensive as something like a Tavern Brawler monk, for example, but we're definitely up there. Our goal isn't to deal the most damage anyway, it's to survive, and we are definitely going to be doing that here. Like I say, this build has some room for some changes here. If you don't care so much about the bard aspect and just wanted to go full monk, you'd have a very, very impressive build. But of course, as with all my builds, we need to talk about the equipment. So, with the equipment, you can see I've got a lot of AC boosting equipment here, which obviously just makes sense, as well as some stuff that's going to help augment our abilities. Starting off with our weapon of choice here, it's been a while, but I'm finally using the Duelist's Prerogative again. College of Valour and the Duelist's Prerogative in a single build. Man, this feels like the channel from a year ago. Anyways, this is a +3 weapon that comes with an extra d4 of necrotic damage, hence my idea to use body of manifestation of body. So while we are only wielding this weapon in our main hand, with nothing in our offhand, we score a critical hit when rolling a 19, and we also gain an additional reaction per turn. Obviously, that second reaction is extremely important to the build. That is going to be our deflect missiles. That works, that's also a part of the build. That's going to be our Defensive Duellist. We can activate all of these multiple times per turn, which is great. And on a hit with a melee weapon, you can use a reaction to deal additional necrotic damage equal to your proficiency bonus. Overall, it's pretty damn good. We're also going to get challenged to a duel, allowing us to spend a bonus action to force an enemy to attack only us, and also inflicting bleeding on them, and Dueler's Enthusiasm, allowing us to attack with our weapon using a bonus action once per turn. So even if we don't want to use our unarmed strikes, we can still attack as a bonus action. And I kind of like the idea of being able to pick whether or not we attack with our fists or our sword in any situation. It just feels like someone who's very adept at dueling, who's able to use everything at their disposal. So overall, the main thing that we're getting from the Duelist's Prerogative is that additional reaction for all of our features, but all this other stuff is just icing on the cake. In the early game though, feel free to use the Sword of Screams, a sword that just has an additional bit of psychic damage to give it that extra oomph. At worst, it's a +1 weapon when it comes to damage, and at best it's a +4, so you know, can't really go wrong there. And I do have the Darkfire Shortbow here. It just makes a ton of sense. We gain a ranged damage option that we need, 2 resistances for free, but the main thing is haste. Now the main issue is the risk of using haste, right? Obviously we have low constitution, meaning that when we use haste, we're pretty much guaranteed to drop concentration on the first hit. But here's the thing. We don't get hit. Not only is haste giving us an extra action, which on a monk is dangerous enough as well, we're going to get even more movement speed as well as a +2 to our armor class. That's where that average of 25 is coming from. And again, as you saw in the combat footage, I didn't get hit once until the very end when the Steel Watcher exploded, which, you know, I wasn't exactly trying to avoid. So overall, this is just a pretty much free, nearly essential buff that we get. Yes, it's only once per long rest, but you're only going to activate this in the big fight where you know you're going to need it. So overall, the Darkfire Shortbow is, as much as I don't want to say it, kind of a necessity for this build in just taking it to that next level of power. Do we 100% technically need it? No. Are you going to feel a hell of a lot worse about it? Yes. So I highly recommend it for this build. Basically what I was trying to say. Moving on to our headgear, we're going to lean a bit more into the necrotic damage thing again with Horns of the Berserker. You get a +2 bonus to attack rolls when attacking creatures that have already taken damage, and unarmed and melee attacks deal an additional 2 necrotic damage as long as you have your full health. With the amount of attacks we'll do in a turn, that's a lot of extra damage to rack up. But if we don't deal any damage that turn, we will take a d4 of necrotic damage ourselves. But I can't ever imagine a turn where we wouldn't be doing damage, so I think that penalty is basically non-existent. But in the early game, pick up the Haste Helm to give you momentum, which is going to increase your movement speed for 3 turns, again, helping make up for the fact that we have short little stubby legs. Moving on, the Cloak of Protection. It's more armor class and saving throws. We get a +1 to our armor class. At this point, it's slightly overkill. You could throw the Cloak of Displacement on here if you don't want to have to use patient defense as much, but I think the whole point of this build, flavor-wise, is actively choosing to dodge, which is why I like patient defense a little bit more, as it is a slightly more reliable, as it will stay up even if you get hit, whereas the Cloak of Replacement won't. So, overall, up to you, but I like the Cloak of Protection more. Moving on to our vest, we have the Vest of Soul Rejuvenation. Whenever we succeed a saving throw against a spell, we regain a bit of hit points, so those dex saves are also going to heal us. And whenever an enemy tries to attack us and they miss, we can immediately retaliate with an unarmed strike. Now, this does always retaliate with an unarmed strike, but the animation is actually kind of bugged. If you have a weapon equipped, it actually does the weapon attack animation, which I think looks really cool, because it actually looks like you dodge and then quickly thrust with our rapier here. So overall, I think this is just a fun thing to do. Again, we have 2 reactions, so now we have a reaction-based attack as well, which feels great, and also an additional +2 to our armor class with our unarmored defense. You can see where we're getting all this defense from, right here. But in the other game, you can grab sort of a version of this with a lesser effect, which is the Armour of Uninhibited Kashigo, and while you have your patient defense active, you can make that same reaction-based attack. Otherwise, there's other stuff like if you want to go for the Graceful Cloth for a dex boost, you could go for that, but I really like these 2 armors for fitting the theme of the build. Moving on to our gloves, we have the Wondrous Gloves, increasing our armor class by 1 and giving us an additional usage of Bardic Inspiration, bringing us to a total of 5 that recovers every short rest. Very good. And finally, the Bone Spike Boots, giving us another +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws. As long as we are not wearing armor or holding a shield, we're doing neither. We're getting increased jump distance and the ability to use Brutal Leap, allowing us to jump on a target, potentially knocking them prone. Overall, we're not really here for that. We're mainly here for the +1 bonus to armor class, but that's a nice little bonus as well. And finally, for our accessories, we have the Unflinching Protector Amulet, allowing us to guarantee that our ally will automatically succeed dodge roll, I guess. Basically, it makes it so an attack against an ally is guaranteed to miss once per short rest. And this is a new one for the channel. Never shown this one off before. The Bracing Band. After shoving an enemy, the wearer gains a +1 to their armor class until their next turn. Now, while this obviously will still work, sometimes we'll have 2 bonus actions, so we can quickly shove an enemy away and gain a +1 to our armor class, giving us 26 overall. I was kind of hoping this worked with Flurry of Blows push, but it doesn't. Despite the wiki saying it should, it doesn't, unfortunately. Womp womp. So feel free to replace this with what you like, but I felt like showing it off because I've never shown it off on the channel before. Technically, it's another AC increase that you can get that will last, giving us a total of 26. But otherwise, it's not necessary. You can replace this with the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel if you want to use Vicious Mockery as a bonus action or something. But otherwise, feel free to put whatever you like here. And finally, the Ring of Protection. We're a tricksy little halfling that's good in the duel. We've got stealth proficiency. Maybe we will steal that idol. We'll be able to grab this, giving us the same effect as the Cloak of Protection, a +1 to armor class and saving throws, which I highly recommend doing. Now, I will bring up some other boot and glove options real quick. Technically, if you don't mind dropping that 1 use of Bardic Inspiration, you could throw on the Braces of Defense, giving you a +2 to your armor class instead. And if you don't really care for the effects of the Bone Spike Boots and want another slightly earlier game boot option, go for the Evasive Shoes, which is still going to give you that buff to your armor class. But overall, I like this more, even though it's technically not the most AC we could have with the gloves. I do think that extra bit of Bardic Inspiration does give the whole build a bit more to work with in terms of its team player aspect. But yeah, that is the build. Quickly for the camp clothing, we've got the Padded Armor version 3 and the leather boots 2 with no dye. These are from Fear Taylor's camp clothing mod, available on all platforms. Right, yeah, no, that's it. That's everything. And what can I say? I wasn't too sure how this build was going to go. Anytime I effectively dump Constitution in a build, I get a little bit worried, and I just think, man, this is never going to work. It works. In solo testing, it worked very, very well, even when I was being mobbed by multiple enemies. Very rarely actually took any damage, and when we did, yes, it gets a little bit dicey, but once you got some, but that's all solo testing. Once you got some allies in the mix, well, I mean, that's it, really. You're giving them Bardic Inspiration, they're taking the heat away from you, allowing you to focus on your 1v1s. You absolutely dominate the 1v1 space, you're just not getting attacked, and you're dealing out as much as you would have taken, which you just don't. So, you know, you're just bam, 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 punching, thrusting, you know, fighting back. It's all good. Like, I don't really know how else to say you dodge and then hit. You just do it. A lot. and it's very, very effective. And being able to be the face of the party as well makes this great for being, you know, to have, you know, your actual player character. And again, the little bit of bardic stuff, you get all that extra flavor, that extra bit of utility. And again, the idea of kind of weaving in Valour's inspiration into this, it just feels so nice, man. It just feels so good. So honestly, I'm really happy with this build, and I genuinely do think it's elevated by Valour, but I know most of you who play this build are going to take Swordsbard, because that's just what you do. But please, give Valour a try. I think as a team player aspect, it just brings a whole new dynamic to the build, and the kind of identity of what we're trying to make here, so I really do think you guys will enjoy it. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.